Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since I've uploaded something, since I was very busy with a lot of different projects, but today I am back doing this first tutorial, and today we're talking about mixing your kick drum and your 808 together to blend in really smoothly, and herefore I have made this simple trap beat. This technique also applies to different genres like future bass, dubstep, hip-hop, and probably also a couple of other genres in the EDM world. But for now, let's have a listen and see what we are dealing with and how we can actually improve the kick and 808 functioning to each other. I already have loaded up a couple of drums. We have a kick drum, we have an 808, we have some hi-hats, and we have a snare rhythm. So let's see how those sound. So we have a pretty basic trap loop going on, and we're going to focus especially on the kick and 808 ratio and how we would make them sound better. So there's a couple of ways to do this. First of all, I like to do like a sidechain to the 808, so the kick drum won't interfere with the 808. So let's go ahead and do that. And in FL Studio, it's pretty simple. We can go to our mixer, and I've already inserted some channels right here. And here I've got my 808 and kick drum. So what I like to do is to route these to buses. So as you can see, I've routed my 808 to my 808 bus, and I've routed my kick drum to my kick bus. And what I like to do is to route my kick bus to a kick and bass bus, and route my 808 bus to the kick and bass bus as well. So we can do like a nice glue later on. For now, let's just do the sidechain functioning, and let's send out a sidechain to our 808 bus. And we can do this pretty simple by just going to our kick bus, and then in the routing section, we can sidechain to this track. Now, on the 808 bus, we can add a compressor and use the input from the kick to create like a ducking effect, so the 808 won't clash with the kick drum. And you can use pretty much any compressor to do this, but I usually like to go with FabFilter Pro C. So let's load that up and let's see how this works. So here we have our Pro C going on, and the first step in sidechaining is by going to this little wheel right here, go to settings, and here at the processing tab, we can select a stereo sidechain. So let's go ahead and click with the right mouse button and select the kick bus. Now for the sidechain to work, we need to open this extra sidechain tab, and we need to put the sidechain on external. And now we will be sidechaining pretty basically, and by changing the attack, release, ratio, and threshold, we can achieve a nice and smooth sidechain, which goes well with the kick drum. Also, I always like to turn off the auto gain, so when the kick drum is not playing, we won't be getting any louder 808s. So let's see how that sounds. And let's just tweak with the settings a little bit. Also, you might notice we can actually see the waveform going on right here, and we can see the ducking happening. I like to go for a pretty fast attack because the kick has a pretty fast transient, and I do want the sidechain to kick in almost immediately. The kick I'm using is not too long, so I don't want a release that's too long, and I also don't want to duck too much, so I'm not really pushing the threshold too much. So let's tweak it a little bit more until we are satisfied with what we got. So that seems pretty good to me. You might have noticed when I put the threshold all the way to the left, like it ducked really extreme, and we really lose a lot of the 808, and we do want to avoid that. But I think these settings are pretty fine. We can also change the sidechain level down here. So let's see what that does. And maybe a little bit would work. You can basically view this as a sort of a dry wet signal, or like something like a threshold as well. So I could lower the threshold maybe just a little bit, or I could just add a little bit of the sidechain level right here. And this all comes to taste as well, so you might sidechain a little bit different than me. So let's bypass the sidechain and let's just listen to the kick and 808 together and see how it sounds with and without the sidechain going on. And you can definitely hear the difference is rather big because we have like more space for the punch of the kick drum to really work. Now we have like this basic sidechain going on. Let's fatten up the kick drum and then let's fatten up the 808. So let's go to the channel of the kick drum and let's add an equalizer and let's see what we can do to really make this stand out a little bit more. And usually I like to boost like a little bit around 50 Hertz to really get that punch out and that like that chest feeling. And then I usually like to cut between like 150 and 200 Hertz to get rid of a little bit of that body-ish sound, so we can have more space for the 808 region which might play there. So let's go ahead and do that. And maybe let's also tweak a little bit in the high end. So I think that works pretty well. We've added a little bit of punch. We got rid of a little bit of that clicking from the kick drum, and then we got rid of a little bit of the low range right here. So usually at this point, I just like to go ahead and tweak my 808, and then later on we can merge them together nicely. So for the 808, let's go ahead and pick up an equalizer as well. Now let's see how that looks. And I like to get rid of the high end because we don't really need that. And I like to add at around the 200 Hertz region, we just cut from the kick. So we can have like a little bit more of harmonics going on there. And we can also add more harmonics by adding like Waves Vitamin or like an R bass or something similar like that. So usually this is my go-to, and I've also added like a little bit of more sub for that really chesty feel. What I would like to do then usually is to add like something for some distortion, get more of those harmonics out, so the 808 will also be more hearable on the phone or like on smaller speaker systems, which are probably more budget friendly and more consumers friendly. So let's go ahead and add like a vitamin. I really like to use this plugin just to boost up the harmonics. And it's a very minor difference, but by just adding a little bit of the low mid, and tad little bit of low, we can get a little bit more definition onto the 808 drum. Then let's go ahead and maybe add like a little bit more of distortion. So maybe something like Isotope Trash or like FabFilter Saturn. But I like to go with the SSL saturator. Well, let's see what we can do to really get more of those harmonics out of it. That sounds pretty good to me. Now let's adjust the gain so we have a similar level, and we are sure it definitely changes the sound and not just the volume. I think that works pretty well. So now we have our kick drum and our 808, and we've added a couple of saturation stuff and some equalizers. Now let's glue it together, and what I like to use is the R bass from Waves. So let's go to our kick and bass bus and let's add that on. I don't like to use too much intensity, just a little bit to like really get that glue going on. And then we can tweak the frequencies to whatever sounds best. And I would say that's probably between 50 and 80 hertz. And you can hear it really glues together that 808 and the kick drum. Then what I like to do usually is just use a compressor just to catch like the highest peaks. And I'm going for a pretty slow attack because I don't want to like lose all of that punch. And I'm going for a pretty fast release because it's a pretty fast transient. So I'm just taming like the more upper clickiness and the peaks instead of like really compressing the punch. And we could also use maybe like a sidechain and choose to only compress like around or above like 80 Hertz. And that actually might work even better. So now we have a pretty nice flow. Let's listen to how it sounds in total. And now let's hear it bypassed. Definitely a big difference for me. Next up, sometimes I like to use multiband on the 808 to tame a little bit of the lows and gain a little bit on that low mid region. So let's go ahead and try that out by using the Pro MB. And usually I like to do like a low crossover here, like a low shelf. And then I usually like to do like another band here to get a little bit more of that mid going on. I think that tames the bass even a little bit more. And then what I like to do is go to the kick and bass bus, and after my compressor I like to add like another EQ and do some cool tricks. So let's go to the EQ on the kick and bass bus, and I like to put like a low shelf right here and make that dynamic. And what this does is that we can catch up the peaks from the kick and make sure like the transient and punch still comes through, but we don't get like that whole lot of bass interfering with like the 808. And I think it just cleans it up a little bit more. And then I usually like to do a low cut as well and just get rid of all like the rumble really low. And I do usually like a 18 or 24 dB slope. And I don't want to go like to 30 because those 20 to 30 Hertz frequencies you'll still be able to really feel in the club. But below 20, I really wouldn't go. And then maybe we can also add like another shelf, go for a low shelf, and let's only like set these to side, so we got more like a mono signal down here. This will make sure to have it really in the middle, sit it really nicely and tight on every speaker system. And that sounds pretty good to me, I would say. So this is basically how I would go about this. This is not necessarily the way or the way I would always use, but this is a pretty common way, I would say, and this will get you pretty far. Obviously, I could tweak it a little bit more, but for the shortness of this tutorial, I would say this sounds pretty good. So this was the tutorial about mixing an 808 and a kick drum, especially for trap and hip hop. I hope you guys liked it. And for the next time, please let me know down below in the comments what you would like to see. And I'll see you back then.